What if I told you that in America, a veteran who risked his life in the Korean War was forced out of the Navy, not because of performance, not because of dishonor, but because of who he was? Congressman Eric Sorensen stood face to face with Secretary Pete Hegseth and demanded a straight answer. Does Harvey Milk, one of the nation's first openly gay leaders, deserve his country's thanks for wearing the uniform? What followed wasn't just a clash about politics, it exposed a deeper truth about who we honor, who we erase, and why service itself is still judged through the lens of identity. And the answer Sorensen received shocked the entire chamber.
Done. Do you have a targeted number of reductions in civilian personnel in our armed forces?
We have very diligently tried to identify the places where we might need to make changes, but for the most part, it's been a DRP process, a volunteer process of civilians to try to reduce the number for cost savings.
Is there an analysis that supports how you're coming up with these decisions?
We looked at about 8 to 10%, Congressman, but ultimately, everyone here acknowledges that the civilian size of the DoD has exploded over the last 20 years. And so where there are room for efficiencies, we are actively trying to find them and right-size those spots, because a lot of those places are not making us more nimble or faster at what we do. And it's not necessarily about the people, but it's the numbers.
Right. What do we say to the people that have strived in their entire life? These are former, retired members of the military working as civilians back home. What do we say to them?
Well, almost all of them took a voluntary DRP to separate.
Do you have a timeline for making these cuts?
Like I said, almost all of them were volunteers who themselves decided to retire early.
Okay, I want to reset for just a moment. And I'm going to be honest with you. I learned a lot about military service from both of my grandpas who served and fought in World War II. My grandpa Sorensen was a proud Navy photographer. You know, I have his photos, they're framed above my desk here on Capitol Hill. You know, I learned to be proud of him. And from him, I learned how to become proud of veterans, which is why I want to talk about a different veteran, one who served in the Korean War from 1951 to 55. He served courageously like my grandpa Sorensen. But unlike my grandpa, this veteran was forced to resign from the Navy. I'm talking about Harvey Milk because he was gay. You see, as a kid, all I wanted to be was the weatherman on TV. You know, I learned that I could have gone into the Army or the Navy to learn meteorology, but someone like me wasn't allowed. They didn't want someone like me, Mr. Secretary. There wasn't anything that I could do to change myself or the way that my nation thought of me. And so I want to keep this very simple. Do you believe that Harvey Milk is a veteran who deserves his country's thanks?
Sir, the decision to rename the ship was...
I'm just asking, do you believe that Harvey Milk is a veteran who deserves his country's thanks? Yes or no?
If his service was deemed honorable, yes.
Yesterday, the Secretary of the Navy was in your seat. He couldn't give me a straight answer. I disagree with your leadership and his, because I believe that every veteran deserves our thanks. We all walk in the footsteps of leaders before us. And you may not find the value in the fact that many of those people are women with different skin colors, different backgrounds, different talents, immigrants, gay, straight, transgender, disabled. You may want to change it, but you can't. Because the America that you and I both serve is a place where everyone has the ability, or should have the ability, to grow up and be the hero their grandpa was. I wanted to do that when I was a kid. We're going back to that time. Gay kids like me, they don't want to go into the Army. They don't want to go into the Navy because you don't care for them. It's happening all over our country. My grandpa taught me never to judge the value of a veteran's service. And I hope, Mr. Secretary, you learn to do the same in your capacity, and you can find it in your heart to make that part of your process. May God continue to watch over our troops, our veterans, and our military families. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair.
The moment began in typical congressional fashion, polite but tense. Sorensen, representing Illinois, asked a question that on the surface seemed straightforward. Do you believe bipartisanship is essential to the mission of our armed forces? Hegseth replied cautiously, saying bipartisanship could be a wonderful thing. It sounded agreeable, almost too safe, but Sorensen wasn't interested in surface-level niceties. He explained that he didn't come to Congress with political baggage, his community sent him there because they wanted solutions, real ones, and in a world drowning in conspiracy theories and political noise, he wanted clarity, not talking points. That's when the hearing shifted. Sorensen wasn't just making small talk, he was about to demand something bigger. Before he got there, another issue came to the table, the Pentagon's plan to cut its civilian workforce. For most people watching, this might have sounded like technical policy talk, but Sorensen cut straight to the human cost. The Department of Defense had been offering early retirements to civilians, many of them retired service members now serving behind the scenes, to slim down by 8 to 10%. On paper it was called efficiency. Officials said the civilian side had exploded over the last 2 decades, so it was time to downsize. But critics warned that what Washington calls modernization often just means doing more with less. These were people who had already dedicated their lives to the military, people whose knowledge was irreplaceable. Cutting them might save money, but at what cost to readiness? Hegseth insisted it was voluntary, a matter of personal choice. Yet Sorensen pressed further, how do you justify decisions that could hollow out the very backbone of military expertise? That exchange highlighted a theme that would return later, the tension between cost politics and the people who serve. Then Sorensen pivoted. He spoke about his own family. Both of his grandfathers fought in World War II. One, a Navy photographer, left behind photos that still hang above Sorensen's desk in Washington. Those images weren't just pictures, they were reminders of pride, sacrifice, and legacy. Sorensen described how he learned to honor veterans from his grandfather's stories, how he was taught that service deserved respect no matter what. It was a personal glimpse into why this topic mattered so deeply to him. But that personal story was only a bridge. He was about to connect his family's legacy to a chapter of history most Americans have never been taught. That's when he brought up Harvey Milk. Today most people know Milk as a groundbreaking figure in the fight for gay rights. But before he became a political icon, he wore a Navy uniform during the Korean War, and unlike Sorensen's grandfather, Milk was forced to resign. Not for failure, not for dishonor, but because he was gay. Sorensen shared something deeply personal in that moment. As a child, he dreamed of serving in the military himself. He wanted to be a weatherman, but he knew he would never be accepted because he too was gay. That dream ended before it even began. In that story was the heart of the issue, patriotism, skill and love of country sidelined by prejudice. And if discrimination could rob the military of leaders like Harvey Milk, how many other talented Americans had been pushed away simply for being who they were? With that foundation laid, Sorensen asked the question that pierced the room. Do you believe that Harvey Milk is a veteran who deserves his country's thanks? Yes or no? He didn't want spin, he didn't want a half answer, he wanted clarity. At first Hegseth hesitated. Then he said if his service was deemed honorable, yes. It was a conditional acknowledgement, but it was still more direct than what Sorensen had heard the day before, when the Secretary of the Navy had dodged the very same question. Yet even in its simplicity, that answer revealed the absurdity of the debate. Why did it take this much effort to confirm that a man who served in uniform, who wore the same flag, deserved recognition? Why was this even a political question? For Sorensen, the conditional phrasing wasn't enough. He made it clear he disagreed with leadership that struggled to offer full recognition. In his words, every veteran deserves thanks. Service is service, sacrifice doesn't come with qualifiers, and it doesn't matter if that veteran is a woman, an immigrant, gay, transgender or disabled. The value of service isn't determined by identity, it's determined by dedication and courage. Yet in today's political climate, even that truth becomes controversial. The moment grew heavier as Sorensen reflected on what this meant for kids today. He said plainly that gay kids don't want to join the Army or the Navy because they don't feel cared for. And how could they when leaders can't even bring themselves to offer basic thanks to someone like Harvey Milk? Sorensen's voice carried the weight of his grandfather's lessons, never judge the value of a veteran's service. And yet here he was, pleading with the secretary to learn that very same principle. He wasn't just talking policy, he was talking about the heart of patriotism itself. And that was the bigger message. Honoring veterans should be the least controversial thing in America. It should be the one place where politics doesn't matter, where sacrifice speaks louder than identity, but instead recognition has become another battlefield. Sorensen's confrontation exposed a contradiction. We claim to celebrate freedom, yet we limit who gets full recognition for defending it. In a healthier political climate, acknowledging Harvey Milk's service would be common sense, but in today's climate, it was treated like a culture war flashpoint. And that's why Sorensen's insistence mattered. It was about more than Harvey Milk, more than a hearing. It was about whether America is willing to live up to its own promise. So the question lingers: if service requires qualifiers, if some veterans are honored and others are not, then what does that say about our values as a nation? If the uniform doesn't erase those differences, then maybe the problem isn't with the veterans, it's with the system that judges them. And maybe, just maybe, the most patriotic act isn't waving a flag or delivering a speech, it's offering gratitude equally, without hypocrisy, to every person who risked everything to serve. So what do you think? Should recognition of veterans be universal, no matter who they are, or does identity still dictate how much gratitude someone receives? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this story eye-opening, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the next video dives into an even more controversial exchange you won't want to miss.